We finally have official new info on God of War Ragnarok thanks to this month's Game Informer cover story. Some very interesting gameplay details have been revealed, plus we also spotted some interesting things in the new screenshots and snippets of footage. So if you want to know more about elemental weapon attacks, the new shields we will be using and more, then a like on the video would really help the channel out. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything God of War, and let's go. So like I said, there's been some big reveals on the gameplay side of things. We've learned way more about the different kinds of shields and the benefits they are going to bring. We will of course start out with the Guardian shield, which I assume will perform like we remember it from the first game, but next to that we now know of the Dauntless and Stonewall shields, both of which sound really cool. And kind of like we already speculated, each shield will reinforce a different playstyle, which is also very exciting. The Dauntless shield is for players who prefer a more reactive playstyle, as it's focused on parrying enemy attacks at the last possible moment. Doing so will charge the Dauntless, as we can see on the image here with the red glow, which will allow players to perform a devastating smash that tosses and stuns enemies. Which to me sounds like a stronger version of the guard counter we already had in God of War 2018, but I'm sure there's more to it. Plus, again, it's really interesting to see an item that really rewards you for playing in a specific way, something that's even more present with the other shield type that was revealed. Because if you equip the bulky Stonewall shield, you are completely unable to parry, with Game Informer describing it as something for tank lovers that prefer slower paced bouts. So blocking is much more important here, especially since the shield will store up kinetic energy from blocked attacks. After it's fully charged, you can unleash this energy by slamming your shield into the ground, releasing a blast of energy, which is something we of course saw in the game's reveal trailer, and it looks really powerful. And going over this screenshot, I think these segments next to your selected weapon actually represent your current charges on the shield, as they only appear in footage where the player is wielding the Stonewall shield, so judging from that, blocking 4 attacks will allow you to perform this powerful slam attack. But the Stonewall shield also has its weaknesses. As Game Informer notes, the Stonewall shield becomes increasingly unstable as it takes damage, opening Kratos up to otherwise ineffective block breaking blitzes. Lead combat designer Danny Ye also said that Kratos will have access to other powerful shields, so we can expect even more than the Guardian, Dauntless and Stonewall shields we already know about. Really exciting stuff. But the piece of info that got me most excited is the inclusion of weapon signature attacks. These are new elemental attacks that are bound to triangle by default, as Santa Monica Studios realized that only using it for the recoil on the Leviathan axe was a bit of a waste, as it meant that in some cases the button would simply do nothing, for instance when you were already holding the axe in your hand. So now we have weapon signature attacks that we can perform with triangle while holding either the Leviathan axe or the Blades of Chaos in our hands. The axe's attack will of course be a frost attack called Frost Awaken, whereas the blades will have a fiery signature attack known as Whiplash. Now I have to say, it's not exactly clear how this system is going to work from the article. At first it sounded like a buff option very similar to the Blessing of the Frost, something also visible in the first trailer for Ragnarok, but with both Game Informer and Sony Santa Monica mentioning attacks plural, there might actually be more to it. We see in both the gameplay and screenshots as well that Kratos has some different looking frost enhanced attacks, so maybe activating this Frost Awaken will switch up our standard combos as well. Either way, I think the addition of a new weapon attack specifically focused on elemental damage is an amazing addition. Especially of course if we do manage to snag ourselves some new weapons during the course of Ragnarok. And even if we find that new weapon late into the game, like with the blades in God of War 2018, there should be no shortage of enemies to try it on. When talking about difficulty with the lead combat designers, Game Informer noted that old locations are periodically repopulated with more powerful fauna. So even if you return to previously visited locations, you should still have enemies to fight, and they should also become more powerful over time. Which is an amazing change, especially when you're revisiting locations after completing the story for some side objectives, as each area should continue to feel fresh and challenging thanks to the new and stronger enemies for you to fight. The team also mentioned that both enemy aggression and lethality would be increased on higher difficulties, and that some of the optional areas will really challenge you if you explore them without some upgrades to your gear and skills. Finally, lead combat designer Danny Ye mentioned that fans of Realm Tears will get a comparable sense of gratification from besting some of Ragnarok's formidable side content. I'm curious here why they picked the Realm Tears as an example. I'd argue that side content like the Valkyries and the realms like Muspelheim and Niflheim were more challenging and rewarding, although I'm sure the game will also have more expansive side content like that. On the note of side activities, we actually spotted some returning ones from God of War 2018 in the new footage. When talking about accessibility options, we see new footage of Kratos throwing the Leviathan axe against a runic bell. And yeah, I don't remember those being used for anything other than the Nornir chest, plus the division in the rage bar at the bottom makes me believe that we will once again be looking for items that are used to upgrade Kratos' health and rage bars. Which has been a staple of the series for a long time, so that's not really that surprising. But I was kind of surprised by this translucent raven that just flew by in some of the new Svartalfheim footage. Which I'm pretty sure confirms that the Odin ravens from 2018 are also back. And even though so far we've only seen new snippets of gameplay, these new shots of Svartalfheim continue to impress me. One interesting change when compared to the first game, at least when it comes to Svartalfheim, is that there's a lot more going on in the world. Game Informer describes a scene where you see a group of dwarven citizens panicking and running away after an alarm sounds. It was a little lonely in the last game, so specifically with Svartalfheim we're trying to show this lived world. There are things here besides just you two. And this is according to lead level designer James Riding. We of course also saw Kratos visiting Alfheim, which looked more like an active war zone, so if anything this just says to me that Santa Monica is investing way more time and effort in their set pieces. And that also translates to level design, as there seem to be a lot more interactable pieces in each level that you can use to your advantage in combat. We now have verticality to work with Kratos being able to use the Blades of Chaos to grapple up the ledges, but Game Informer also mentions explosive pods to blow enemies up, and I think we see a piece of destructible cover in this new footage too. And this is all part of the team's philosophy that Kratos should be able to play with his food, so to speak, which means there should be many ways in which you can choose to take your enemies out. On the note of enemies, we did learn a bit more about one of the enemy types we'll be facing in Ragnarok. These little lizard boys you might remember from the game's reveal are called Grims. There are cursed variants that spit poison at you, and we also saw a bigger, stronger version, so it looks like the Grim are a proper enemy faction with multiple subtypes rather than just a single recurring enemy. I did some quick digging to check if these creatures exist in actual Norse mythology, and the only thing I could find was a mention of a water troll who's very good at fiddling, so I think it's safe to say that these are a new creation for the God of War universe. Which already means the enemy variety is going to be so much bigger than in 2018, as we already have the Draugr, Grims and Einherjar as fully fledged enemy factions to fight, and on top of that we have the more unique creatures like the Stalker and Dreki too. And while there are no full-on story details in the interview, there is an interesting quote in the article about the story. When reminiscing with game director Eric Williams about the story for God of War 2018, Game Informer notes that the sequel would require a similar strategy, albeit with Atreus as the focal point. Which I think is really interesting, as the story of Kratos and Atreus making it through Ragnarok would have been interesting enough already, at least to me. But no, it really sounds that at the core, Ragnarok will focus on Atreus' character and growth, which I can only reckon is to set him up to serve as a full-blown playable protagonist alongside Kratos, or if the prophecy turns out to be true, to follow in his footsteps. Either way, some really exciting info here, and we will be getting more gameplay from Game Informer soon as well. We will of course cover that here, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss our next God of War video, and leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it. If you want, you can watch our previous video on all the exciting details we were able to uncover from the reveal of the collector's edition. I'll see you in the next one, goodbye.